asked the wrong audience what they wanted. I asked my sales reps what they wanted. And they, of course, were brainstorming. But who I should have asked, because they're the ones that pay the bills, is I should have asked my customers. So by asking the wrong audience, I was 10 grand in debt. I mean, I did cash flow it. I thankfully didn't borrow anything for the 10 grand, but I had to give up the hard-earned 10 grand to figure it out. And I just asked the wrong audience.
Rebekah Scott is in the house. She is a mother, an author, a designer, a coach. She is a ranching wife or a farming wife. So we have a little bit of that in common. So she has all these amazing titles. She wears a lot of hats. But we all know that wearing all those hats isn't always so glamorous. And so our audience wants to know, what went wrong?
Oh gosh, I have so many that apply to the what went wrong, but this one I think is very relatable, and I'll tell it so that everybody else is like, oh wait, am I asking the right audience? So I run 3 different brands. I have a coaching and a podcast similar to Tabitha. I love it, but I also get to design purses and accessories for a living, where you custom make your purse. You pick the style and the fabric and everything. And thankfully, blessedly, there's about 20 on my team to keep up with all the orders, and I love that. So early on when I was doing this, there was only about maybe 5 people on my team. And I want to frame it up that it was like my twin sister was a sales rep, my college roommate, and my cousin. You just gather the people that are like, sure, Rebekah, we'll come alongside you and cheer you on, right? Yeah. And so I had my first sales meeting in my house. And to really frame it in, you guys, we lived in a 140-year-old farmhouse. We have since moved 50 yards into grandma's house. So that one's slightly newer, but still living on the farm. And our heater went out that morning. And so I literally had the meeting and we all had our coats and our mittens on. Like, if that's like how you start things, I don't know what else. So anyways, I'm having this meeting. We're freezing our tails off. We're drinking coffee. And I'm saying, hey, let's think about how to generate some sales, because they were my sales reps. I had decided at that point that I wanted to do more sewing and less selling. But FYI, I have to do both. But at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm more efficient at the sewing part. And I didn't necessarily like the selling part as much. So I was like, okay, I know some gals. They'll do the selling. I'll do the sewing. This will work out. So I have them over for this meeting. We're freezing our tails off, but we are energized to make some sales. I was like, what are you guys seeing out there? How do we do this? Well, at that time, trunk shows were really popular. So, like the Tupperware parties, the Pampered Chef, where the girls come over and they order things. Now, since then, nobody does it that way, right? We all do it online. But there was a time when we actually got together in the evenings and we weren't at a kids event, right? And so I was like, okay, the trunk shows were going okay, but I wanted to figure out how to book more of them and just get some more sales going. So I asked, of course, my sales team who does sales. And they were like, how about a catalog? And I was like, oh yeah, a catalog is a great idea. Shiny, glossy pages. That way we could put the catalog in places of business, like a dentist office, like somebody in the office is like, I'm going to host this Rebekah Scott Designs show. Here's the cute catalog. Look through it while you're at work today, order a few things, and we'll place our order with Rebekah. And then the host of the show would get the credit, blah, blah, blah. And we could put it in different offices, and we're like buzzing. We're like, this is going to be great. We could do all these like cool office parties, or maybe it is just a home party, but they don't have to get together with their girlfriends all in one spot. It could be like, I'll bring the catalog over. Let's talk this over. So we think this is a great idea. And I knew immediately the steps. So I was like, I can implement this in no time. We need a photo shoot. We need a printer, and we need a catalog layout. Like, we got to figure out how they will actually order, so it's as hands-off as possible for us. And then they just submit it and we get busy sewing. Okay. So I get all 3 of those things put together. The photographer that I hired was somewhat inexperienced, but she would do the photography, gather the model, and do the photography for the actual product. And so I was like, this is a win-win, a package all in one. When I got the pictures back, she picked her niece, who was 12 years old, to model the purses. And she thought it would still be cool because the purses would be below. All the photos were her shoulders down. And so the purse was like at her feet. And I was like, oh, Father in heaven. Like, what are you going to do? So I was so new at this, right? And I'm like, okay. Right. She said she was an expert. She's done catalogs before. She's done print before. Maybe the images aren't that bad. I mean, who wants to look at a person's face anyways? I'm trying to sell the purse, not the person. So I was like, just, reasoning like, okay, this will be okay, this will be okay. And the outfit was terrible. It was super school marm looking. But I was like, again, I was like, well, she's the expert. And the purse
Right.
still looked good because the purse was cute. But anyway, so I'm like, okay, fine. We'll go to print with that. We worked out how the purses would be laid out, and we worked out a spreadsheet. But when I saw the spreadsheet, or I should say the order form, I was like, this is confusing. I knew how to sell it. I knew how to set up this order form. You ask for their name and address, blah, blah, blah. But then you ask for the style, the leather color, the lining color, the zipper color, and the features. I could say that just like that, and I knew it. Meanwhile, this order form was like all over the place, and it was confusing. But again, I was like, well, she's the expert, and maybe I'm too close to this. Maybe I can't see it. So, yep, we're going to go with it. I did ask my sales team. They're like, yeah, it seems okay. I mean, we all had a good giggle about the 12-year-old, but they're like, well, she's the expert, because they were following my lead by saying that first. I should have been quiet. Anyway, so we get it printed. It costs $5,000 to get it printed and the photographer. And I want to use numbers because I don't think as women we use numbers enough. Okay. So it's $5,000 to get it printed or to get it put together. And it was another $5,000 to get it printed. So I'm $10,000 in. So I did my little entrepreneurial thing, and I was like, okay, I'm going to create a little poster board with a cute little thermometer and all the red lines on it. And then I'm going to fill it in as I sell all the way up to 10,000 to pay for this cool new project. And I knew once I had it printed, we could start booking the parties and I could start getting it to people. So we did that. The sales reps hit the ground. They each had like, I don't know, 5 catalogs. We were starting, orders were not coming in. And then I'm like, okay, what's going on? What are you guys hearing? And they're like, well, it's a little bit hard on the order form to understand what we're doing. I'm like, okay, well, true. And they just couldn't get people to get on board. And so finally, I don't know how many months in, but I was like, okay, we got to deep dive. I cannot ignore this anymore. What happened here? Guess how much we actually sold using the catalog? $600. $600. 610. This is how memorable it was for me. I was like, what? And so that big of a difference, my husband had to sit with me. He was like, okay, honey, I love your enthusiasm, but I think we need to think this through. And I was like, totally, I got to dissect what happened. And so when I started thinking it through, I thought, okay, I thought I did the right thing. We were going to make all these sales here. But when I go to a show, and when my sales reps go to a show and they touch and feel and they talk to the customer direct, we make a sale every time. So I should have known, in a custom business, which I am, it's much better to touch and feel and relate to them one-on-one than it is through a catalog. And because I'm a manufacturer, but I'm a handcrafted manufacturer, so I have to keep proving myself. To this day, 15 years in, I still have to show them, like, I sold this with my machine and it's well done, for them to buy it. Because sometimes handcrafted can have a bad, connotation.
Right.
Now, when they see mine, and they touch and feel it, they're like, dang, this is good. I'm like, I know, because I'm a good 4-H'er, you guys. But anyway, so I knew, like, okay. So we have to, like, we got to go back to person, which we can do. But what in particular happened with the catalog? After sitting with it, I was like, okay, if the customer at the shows, if I would have been, I was listening. I actually knew the answer to this. What happened was I asked the wrong audience what they wanted. I asked my sales reps what they wanted. And they, of course, we're brainstorming, but who I should have asked, because they're the ones that pay the bills, is I should have asked my customers. So by asking the wrong audience, I was 10 grand in debt. I mean, I did cash flow it. I thankfully didn't borrow anything for the 10 grand, but I had to give up the hard earned 10 grand to figure it out. And I just asked the wrong audience. So anytime now, still stay, I'm like, okay, we get some feedback, we listen to it, but I go, okay, well, who's asking it? Is it something that we actually do need to fix? Is this a one-off case? And are we asking the right audience? Or anytime I introduce something new, I'm like, why are we introducing this? Did they ask for this? Like, did they ask for a wallet with the coins on the back, and that's why we're creating it? Or is this my creative bone? And I'm like, I can make that, because of my creativity and my entrepreneurial ways, where I'm like, let's just do it. I really could produce what you asked me to do, but I need to make sure it's not just a one-off for this unique woman situation. And this would actually be 30 other women's actual situation that they want this exact bag as well. So once I had figured out, okay, I know what the customer wants. Once I asked the customer what they wanted a website. And I'm like, I knew that. I already knew that. My website was just wonky at best. And this was before websites were great anyways. But I knew mine was cumbersome. And so I begrudgingly asked my husband if we could sell some livestock so that I could start a new website? And he said, sure, thankfully. And we had a couple of cold calls at the time. So he's like, actually, that could work. And as soon as I got the website up and running, within 6 months, I had paid off the website and the catalog. So It really was like, think through. And I was hustling in that phase, because I had something to prove, especially to myself and to my husband, who wasn't holding it over my head, but just as a team, I was like, honey, I'm so sorry. I will do this right. So just learn from then on, like, okay, ask your customers when you want to introduce anything new, when you want to take on feedback, when you want to do a growth year, whatever it is, ask your current audience, are they liking your things and are you doing the right things that they want?
Did you know the number one way to build wealth is through real estate? Have you always wanted to buy your first income property, but you didn't know where to start? Join my group, Legacy Wealth Builders, where we will teach you how to buy your first income property and then keep your wealth by teaching the success and wealth principles to your kids. Because it's not just about building your wealth, but it's about keeping it for generations to come. So click the link, join our group, because for the month of June, the group is free. So get all the training you need and join the group now. I love that so much. And I think, we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening, and it's like, we're so creative and we want all these things and we can do all these things. And a lot of times you're gifted in those, but it's like, you can be like a fire hose sometimes, and it's like, okay, but is that what the audience needs? Like, is that the next step? Is that the next product that goes with this? One of the best pieces of advice that I got was, in terms of a customer, was when you sell something, first of all, it has to be what they want. But then when you sell like something else, whether that's like, to you would be like a wallet to the purse, or, if you're an online customer, it's like, if you sell the course, the next thing has to be the most logical thing. Like, it has to solve a problem, but not problem that they think the first thing that you sell has to be. And when I started thinking through that, me being like an online, knowledge broker, however you want to call it, like giving out my knowledge, that was huge. And like, for you, it's like, if they think that purse is exactly what they need, and then you're trying to sell them another purse, they're like, but wait, you said this is going to be the thing, a confused buyer never buys. And so they're like, but wait, okay, then I don't want that, And so I love that. Yeah. It's like listening to your audience. So,
for sure. Yeah.
Especially audience, sorry, I just want to know, like, in the time span of this, how long was this? And I'm curious, I know your husband was, very gracious, but can you get to the little nitty gritty of it? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs on here that are married, and it's like having that conversation with your spouse, especially when you feel like you dropped the ball. It's hard.
Oh yeah. Well, it was still very hard to have it, but I had made the big chart. Remember, I had the big poster, and it wasn't moving up. But I had a goal, honey. We were going to cover it. I had the poster, remember? And so he looked at it, and I'm like, okay, and it wasn't like a confession. I'm like, help me sit with this, because we got to figure this out. And he's like, okay. And I guess I would say maybe we have a unique marriage. We're based on faith, so we both are like very team player. But he was like, all right, what are we going to do here? I'm like, okay. And then I just had to sit with it and pray with it on my knees, because there was some tears involved too, because 10 grand is a lot for something to flop. And I had several warning signs along the way, especially the expert thing. Like, the moral of the story is I asked the wrong audience, but the second part of the story is, why didn't I consider myself an expert at my own job? So like, what made me not an expert? And I'd been sewing for about 5 years then, and selling successfully, because I had sales reps and I had a team of seamstresses already. And so looking at that, and then also leaning into trusting my husband. He has a and everybody knows this person, where their gut reaction is usually right, but sometimes you don't want to hear it, because you're like, dang it, why are you always so like, he's just a very good judge of character and intention. And I am like the shiny ball entrepreneur who's like, it'll be fine. And I'm very optimistic. So I'm like, I'll work around it. I'll cheer them up. And
I'll figure it out. I'll make it work.
Yeah. Oh, and I'll hustle through it. And sometimes that works. And sometimes it's actually very wise to listen to that one friend or spouse or sister who's like, hey, hold up, I'm sensing something's off. And he did that. He did that right away with the first of the layout. He goes, is this even a girl? Is this a girl? I'm like, yes, she's 12. How'd you know? And she's like, he goes, I don't know. It's like her kneecaps look like a kid. Like,
They know.
they
You know how
know.
you said you need to ask the right audience, in which I agree. But sometimes it's important to ask the like an audience that doesn't know what you do,
Yes.
because if they can understand it,
Yep.
then your audience will. But if they can't,
Mm-hmm.
then you know that you're in trouble. Like when you're doing any sort of like online course, or like you with the
Mm-hmm.
catalog and understanding the layout, and people say like 5 year or a fifth grade level or a third
Yeah.
grade level, if they cannot understand it, because
Yep.
if people feel stupid, they won't buy.
Right.
We don't
Right.
want to be embarrassed or bamboozled,
No.
like, oh, I got sold this wanky
Yes.
purse that
Yes.
looks
Yes.
horrible, and so I'm just not going to buy. When in reality, like you said, if they would have touched and feel it, or like if it would have
Mm-hmm.
been explained this way. And
Yep.
I love what you said about
Mm-hmm.
the expert photographer, because I think we do this. Okay, I'm just going to throw myself under the bus. I might throw you under the bus. When
Okay.
stuff is a little less costly, okay, I don't like to use the
Oh,
word
yeah.
expensive, but when it's less costly, we're like, well, but it's going to be okay because they do know, like we justify it because we really,
Yep.
we don't
Yep.
necessarily have that cost up
Mm-hmm.
front. So we're like going to justify it. Because you told me
Yep.
from the beginning,
Yep.
if you guys were listening, this girl wasn't really an expert photographer. I mean, you said
No.
she'd done some stuff, but really not. But because we've invested in them, we're like, oh, but they really are. So I'm going to trust them. It's like
Yes.
verifying our decision
Sources.
making process.
Yes. Yep. Yep. So now that it's interesting, a roundabout way of saying too is what I started doing is like, I need my little board of advisors. So
Yeah.
like a traditional job and a corporate job has this
Yep.
board and everything has to go through the board. And I'm like, well, I want a board. So I hired people that are a little bit more stiff on feedback, like my husband. He doesn't cost
Yeah.
a penny, so there's that good. And then some other people in the entrepreneur world that I was like, I'm going to put things through these filters. And then now we exchange the ideas as well. So that I do have those buffers, because the entrepreneurial spirit is like iterate as you go and let's go. And I'm a maker. So my true calling is a gypsy. I want to sew it, get on the road and sell it.
Right.
But
Just and be
that's
done. The creative spirit and
right.
go.
I'm like,
Yeah.
let's do this. But turns out, you guys, now I could say it's the living proof of it, as many as we make a week, you actually make more money when you're not just debuting it right after, when you have some marketing leading up to it, and
Right.
some social media and some drive. And so now I understand those things. But yeah, I got advisors involved as well. And then the other question that you said earlier, I thought, yeah, that's the other thing I started doing. Before we would implement anything, I would say, why are we doing this again? To avoid like getting 3 or 4 steps into a meeting and going, wait, why are we doing this? Like zoom out as quick as possible and as often as possible, zoom out and say, why are we having this meeting? Why are we
Right.
introducing this product? Why are we hiring this person on? Like, why is a very good way of slowing down my like, let's do this attitude, to
Right.
just like really concentrate on what matters.
Yeah. No, I think that's again, as entrepreneurs, we're like, oh, let's create this. And it's like, but wait, why are we doing that? Like, this is working. Why are we gonna like jump ship
Yes.
when this is working? And I have done that in businesses. I used to do workshops with women in development, and I was like, yeah, it was profitable. And when people ask me about it, they're like, well, why? I'm like, I don't know why I switched. I really don't. I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes it's a God thing. Like I think you prove it's you, but then sometimes I think it's like, oh, squirrel, shiny thing, or this, that,
right?
And then
totally get it.
Tony Robbins talks about the 3 categories that people live in. So you have the leader, the entrepreneur, and the creator, or the artist is what I think he calls it. And we all label ourselves entrepreneurs. And in reality, an entrepreneur, usually you're the artist and you say you're the entrepreneur, but an entrepreneur is somebody who can sell anything without any emotional ties to it at all, and like knows all the businessy type stuff, and they're willing to go and sell, and like more like the salesperson, because they don't care what they're selling. They're entrepreneurs. They'll hustle. They'll do this business. They'll create this to 7 figures. They're not that creator. And the creators, the artists, they just want to make the stuff. They want to make money on it because, again, they see that spirit of like making money, doing what they love, but they'd rather just make it. They'd rather just have that. And then the leader is the person who knows all the details, and they make everything work together, and they're willing to have those hard conversations, and they're willing to rein in the artist and rein in the entrepreneur. So there's a heart behind the business, right? And so my husband and I started thinking about this, and he at nature is an artist. Like, he likes to create. He likes to make things pretty. He's a farmer, so he likes to turn the seed into crops. Like, that's his thing. And I'm half creator, half leader. Like, I don't like to micromanage, but I like to look at everything and say, okay, this needs to work. Like, this needs to work. This needs to work. Like, looking at things so we can all work together. That's even how I do my family. So like, Becca, I look at you and it's like, you're clearly the artist, but you have that drive of the entrepreneur, but really you're like, but I'd rather be making this. And our listener on here, you need to identify, like, are you the entrepreneur? Are you the artist? Are you the leader? And none of those are wrong. I think all of them can start great businesses, but you got to know where, like, you got advisors because you were like, I need perspective here because I'll be, chasing the next thing. And so I think that is what went right in this. Like, the what went wrong led to this part where now you're having like a thriving business and loving what you do, and your podcast and your business.
I have another 3 for you that's super interesting that I learned too. I don't remember who it was, but they said you're usually 2 of the 3 things. You're a builder, you're the idea person, the builder, and the shipper. You're usually 2 of them. So I'm definitely the idea person. But believe it or not, even as the artist, I'm not the builder, because the builder is like the intricate details of like posting it and the dimensions of it and like the back end and the coding. I'm like, ew, but I like to ship it. So I want to like idea, create it, and then I just want to ship it. And I want to skip that middle part of the building. But there are some people, and I hired them, thankfully, they're really good at the building part. So it's another way for entrepreneurs to look at it as like, which 2 are you? You're usually about 2 of them. And the one that you're not, look for them, hire them.
Yes. Hire out. Don't be afraid to hire out, especially if you do have some sales coming in. I mean, you don't want nothing, but like when you have some sales coming in, you need to look at what are your weaknesses and hire those out and go with your gifting. That's where your time is most valuable. That's where you'll feel the least drained. And then, go on from there. Well, we're going to have all of your links in the description. Your podcast, your email, your website, or whatever, like all that stuff is going to be in the description. But what do you want to leave our audience with? Because I love your energy. I know, I don't even think you touched on the fact that you're a mom. You have, I mean, I said that at the beginning, but it's like, where is all this leading? Where are you at now? Like, what are you excited about coming up?
Oh, I'm excited about so many things. We're in the middle of summer mode. So I literally have made 5 trips to town, and we live in the country. So I've gotten nothing done, but I was like, well, I'm recording a podcast today. So that'll be my, like the highlight of today. So we're in the thick of that. I'm really excited about, we just launched a new coaching program because I am at a stage where I can go back to doing some one-on-one coaching. And so that's kind of exciting. And actually, if you really want to learn about how I do all the things while I wife and run all the brands and have all the kiddos, I have 2 simple hacks that I do for each one of my systems. And that's the majority of my podcast is on 5 systems: me, food, family, work, and home. And I have 2 simple hacks. If you go to the website, theencouragerpodcast.com, you can download it there. And it's just 2 things to do in each one of those to get you started with feeling a little bit more confident and less chaotic. So I think that's the biggest thing, is like, we just feel so chaotic and we give up too easily. And I don't think, maybe that's not fair. It's not, we're trying not to give up, but it feels a little bit more like a hamster wheel. And so I help you get a little bit more grip and kind of compartmentalize all of these different systems so that you can do them your way. I give you examples, but mostly it's just isolating for what works best for your family. So I'm really excited for people to get their hands on that and to just feel a little bit more like, okay, I can do this.
Right. It's like less overwhelmed, because when we're overwhelmed, it's like, we don't want to move forward. And like you said, you don't want to let yourself down, but something's got to give. When you're a mom, entrepreneur, like, you can't, I mean, just like us, it's like, you're just constantly like putting out fires and like working through it and going through it and doing this. And whether you're male or female, overwhelm or anxiety or chaotic, however, whatever label you want to put on it, it's because our lives are so full and beautiful and abundant, but there are ways that,
Yes.
tools
Yep.
that you can tap into. So I love that. And we'll put that in the description too, to make
Yes.
sure that our audience gets that. So
Yes.
any
Yes.
last parting words, Becca?
I would just like to remind everybody that everything is doable at 1%. And so when you start to feel the overwhelm, it could turn into burnout really quick. But if you just did 1% towards whatever it is you're working at, that's one email. That's like one Google search or one phone call or one like sticky note. Do things at 1% until you can get your feet and get that grip that I talked about.
Yeah.
So I really tell people, like, you don't have to take it at 100%. You don't have to like put your kids in something for 60 hours so you can get your project done. Just do things at 1% until you can get some of that momentum. Then you can increase it. But just to remind everybody, stop the overwhelm by doing things at just 1% to start with.
Oh, I love that. That's a great way to sign off. So
Yeah.
thank you
Yeah.
so much. And
Thanks for
guys,
having
remember,
me.
yes, if you're listening and you are feeling that overwhelm, or you're starting a business, or whatever it is that you're going through right now, or maybe you know somebody, share this episode with your
Yes.
girlfriend, share your
Yes.
episode with your husband, everybody share this episode. Don't be a giver, don't be a taker, be a giver. We're on
Amen.
we're on YouTube, we're on all podcasts. Remember to comment and let us know what you're loving. If you're liking these kind of episodes or whatever, like, let us know so we can serve you better. And also, if you're in the AKA wrong of it right now and you're feeling the overwhelm and you're stressed out and you don't know what to do and you don't know where to go, stick with it. Because if you persist, the what went wrong will lead to the what went right. You just got to stick with it. All right. Until next time. Bye, guys.